Hello, friends. Chris Gordon with you again for Unsung Heroes for DJB Productions. Very happy to be back with part two of our tribute to the amazing Matthew Bradley. And that was Just One Thing, a song from the Sunset Strip days that we introed our show with. And today I have with me, I'm very excited to have with me, Mr. Bill Ashton, bassist and songwriter. Performed with Matt in both Mask and Sunset Strip, went on to play and tour with Vinnie Moore, then Gypsy Rose also, and then they later became Motherlode, where he and I performed together in New York City. And welcome, Bill. Thank you so much for doing the show with us. How you doing?
Good. No problem. It's great to see you.
Yeah, it's been a matter of fact, I think the last time I might have seen you was in New York in 1993. So it's been a long time.
It's been half a lifetime.
But you look fantastic. So very happy to have you here. And there's a lot I want to talk about. And I want to go back a little bit. Where did you grow up?
Grew up in Springfield, Pennsylvania.
Okay, so
Delco boy. We're all Delco boys.
Beautiful. And when you started playing the bass, was it the bass? Were you someone that was like, I want to play the bass, or did you come to the bass from another instrument?
Well, I had, I think I had a guitar. It was one of those little knockoff Les Pauls that you can get at Sam Goody, with like the string action was 2 inches off the fretboard, and
right.
I would bleed more than play. But I was just kind of goofing around trying to figure stuff out. But there was some friends of mine in school who were jamming in high school. One of them being John Dennis, guitar player. You know him.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he's still playing and still doing great. And they were like, well, we need to have a bass player to jam with. And I didn't have any equipment at the time. So turned out that the drummer, his brother, played bass, and he was okay with me just using his bass while we messed around.
Okay.
And there was an amp there and everything. So I just did that. And, in the beginning, it was just playing like Judas Priest songs and, real simple stuff. But after we started, expanding our catalog a little bit, I realized you can play more than one note on a bass. So I was amazed. I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. So I went out and just got myself a bass. That's about 16 years old at that time.
But you've been spending so much time with the big, guitars with action 2 feet off the neck that, go into bass with the big strings on it made sense.
Yeah, it was no problem. Actually, I think I took the strings off. I just took the strings off that guitar and started playing air guitar with the records. Everything was useless.
So one of the things that struck me about you when I first heard you play, and I believe we may have talked about this at one point, was you always had this very funk vibe. There was a James Jamerson influence in your playing. You were a line player. You weren't this guy that was like, oh, what's the chord? I'll just hit the 8th note and keep the rhythm. You were playing lines even early on. What was that influence? How early did that come into your playing?
I think by the way, it must be by the way I taught myself, because I didn't learn music. I pretty much learned everything by ear. I'm much better with music theory and everything now, but back then I just picked up records and learned the songs. So after I got a little bit better at things, I started listening to a little bit more complex bass playing. I was still into metal, but I liked a lot of other things as well. Mm-hmm. So things like Iron Maiden, I started doing that. So just to get my the finger picking down.
Right.
And then graduated into Rush, and yes, just like any musician in high school who wants to play better. Mm-hmm. And Chris Squire and Geddy Lee, they're very bass line centric. So right. I would literally come home from school every single day, put an album on, and for hours just try and figure out every single song on it.
All by your.
Yeah. So that's where that happened, and And like you said, I was into other things. They're like Larry Graham and Jamerson and Bootsy Collins. Always, here and now, it's like that's so cool. And I really like the Police as well. And Sting's a great bass player.
Oh,
Those bass
absolutely.
lines, yeah, behind the scenes, those bass lines are really good.
So was that part of leading to my next question is how Matt came into your life, and was that acquisition of that style of bass playing, was that something that Matt was attracted to with your playing, or was that something that attracted you to Matt? And how did that all happen? Like how did you become part of Matt's ensemble?
So you remember the McDade House, right?
Oh yes, very well.
Everybody from Delco remembers the McDade House. I first met Matt back when I was in high school, and we were doing the Battle of the Bands things there. And Matt was in a band called Syntax
That's
at the
right.
time. They were awesome. They would always win the Battle of the Bands. I think my band maybe came in second once or anything.
And what was that band called, by the way? What was that band called at the time? Do you remember?
Axis, I think, something like that. And we mostly did covers. We had a couple originals, but we did covers and things like that. And I got to meet Matt a few times through that. And then after I got out of high school, the Mask cassette started circulating with, Hassled and I Hate Metal and I'm Not Worried and all those great songs on it.
Yeah.
And we heard that they were going to be playing at the McDade House. So I was like, oh, yeah. We got to get out and see them. At that time, I think I was still noodling around with my buddies and stuff, but I started trying to learn how to play more groove-oriented lines, more in slap technique and things like that. I was using like James Jamerson, Larry Graham. Again, we didn't have YouTube back then, so I had to dig up records and things like that to find stuff.
Yeah.
And even John Taylor from Duran Duran. He had some slap stuff. Yeah. So listening to that, and there's bands like Kajagoogoo, like that Too Shy song is quirky as a bass line is just killer.
What was it? Level 42 is another one.
Yeah, Level 42 was another one. I didn't really discover them until later on. Actually, after I met Chris Warner and Dave Warner introduced me to them, and I was like, whoa, this guy's nuts. So that was how I was approaching things, and I had this idea in my head. It's like, how do I get this groove funk oriented stuff married with like heavier rock and metal? Right. And I was still kind of trying to flesh that out. And I think some of the original songs that my band was playing at the time, I did some slapping. I wasn't very good at it, but long story short, when I went out to see Mask play at the McDade House, it was Dave Knight and Matt, and on bass was Tony Henry from Pretty Poison at the time.
Right.
And he's an amazing bass player. I sat there and I watched him. I was like, oh, okay, that's how you put the two genres together. And I was floored by the way Tony was playing. I just couldn't keep my eyes off of it.
Wow.
And I might be wrong because this is like 1987, 88, and I was like 19 years old, maybe. Matt came up to me at that show, and because Tony was with Pretty Poison, and they were going off to do some tours because they were. Catch Me Now and Falling was really getting up on the charts, so they were going to go off and play, and Matt needed a steady player, so he came up to me and started talking, and we already knew each other a little bit. Handed me the tapes and said, hey, just learn the songs, we'll get together.
Wow. And so what was that first session like? What was it when you first went into, here's the songs, you're coming in and you learn them, and there you are. Now, at that time, was this before the Warners?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Not too far before Chris joined the band, but it was before that. And to be honest with you, I don't even think I had an audition or anything.
You were in.
Well, no, I think Matt kind of wanted to make sure I could play and stuff. So I remember going over his parents' house,
Okay.
and just me and him just kind of playing in his bedroom, and then he would come over to my house and we would just do the same thing.
Right.
And I knew most of the songs, but there would be a couple things like I'm not, a little struggling with, like, well, what's that slap line? I couldn't like quite hear it on the tape or anything like that. And he would be like, well, I think Tony does it kind of like this, because Matt could play bass as well as I could. And I'm like, okay, I got that. And let me practice that. And then we get together again and I'd have it down by then. So we did that a few times. And then went down to, started going down to Clayton, New Jersey, where Dave Knight lived. And he had a little rehearsal thing set up in his garage, and started auditioning other people for the rest of the band. And that's where Chris Warner came in, and he was like perfect. He felt right in, it was a perfect fit. And then those drummers who were being auditioned, some bad drummers. I remember one was so nervous when he was playing that he went and hit the cymbal, and the stick flew across the room and just missed my head. And we were all like, okay, next. But Tyrone was, he was right up the street from Dave. And when Dream came down, it was just, okay, this is the guy. Absolutely.
That's the sound, right?
Oh my God, yeah.
Now, was everything pretty much written? Because now we're going from, at what point did it stop being Mask and become Sunset Strip? Was this around that time?
No, we started playing shows. So once we finalized the lineup, I mean, all the songs at that time were written already.
They were already written.
Matt and Dave already did them. They did the little 5-track demo. There was some more songs as well, but everything was pretty much done.
Okay.
The collaborative light writing thing, which didn't really happen until Sunset Strip went on. We played shows. Not a lot of them, but we played like the normal places.
Okay.
In Delaware County and Pennsylvania, we did pretty good for the turnouts.
Mm-hmm.
Jersey, maybe not so much. I think we had to start at the Galaxy with the 1 o'clock in the morning shift on Wednesday nights, when you're playing with bartenders. Yeah. But it's all good, because even if there was 300 or 300 people that are still playing, and you're getting better at the time. Right. Again, I was only like 19 years old then. Okay. I was only playing bass for a few years. So it was quick learning on the job.
Yeah.
And then over time, things weren't working out quite right, and we kind of morphed into Sunset Strip, and that's when
the co-writing aspect started. What were some of the pieces that you were involved with in the composing aspect?
Not a heck of a lot. Definitely wasn't back then. I still suffer from this. I'm not a great composer. Okay. Back then, it was more of a lack of knowledge of music. Now it's more of, I have too many boys to play with here, and I end up tweaking on just too many things. But back then, I was only good for like writing parts, riffs, maybe a progression or things, something like that, or like here's a transition. Helped out with some the melody with the singing and some hooks and things like that. So I just have a handful of riffs or little things, and Matt would record them, and then a couple of weeks later, one or two of them would end up on a part of a new song, and that worked. And the collaborative thing was more once Chris and Dave Warner were in the band. They had a lot of contributions. They were really good at presenting more of an arrangement.
An arrangement, right?
Yeah,
Everybody
and
was
a
one.
lot easier for Matt to work with.
Okay.
So their input was really good, and the stuff was great too. And with Dream, he would have input as well. So we would get through a song. Matt would record some demo, but he would change the beat up in some way. I want to do a little bit more of a shuffle, or I want to do these accents here, and we would all just mold right into it from there. So it was really cool. It was cool. So with writing with me back then, it was more just parts and maybe a few hooks of the songs.
Mm-hmm. But you guys all sang too, so he was always big into that. He wanted everybody to hit the harmonies. Now he was composing those harmonies too, right? Was he assigning your part? Knew what your range was and said, "Hey, sing this part here." I'm not talking about the words. I'm talking about the actual harmony part. Or was that something that Chris Warner did as kind of the, music director for the live band, if you will?
I can't remember. I think we just kind of worked it out because Dream sang as well.
Well, he wrote the melody to "Same Old Shit, Different Day."
Yeah.
Which started out with a phone call.
Yep.
And it's you guys did that live where he would, one thing that blew me away, about that one show and we're going to show a clip from it in a second, was that Dream sang "I Hate Metal."
Mm-hmm.
And hearing him kind of capture Matt's vocal vibe was really just amazing. It was great.
Yeah.
It was just so cool. And that's one of the things you guys used to do is do the rotation, switch instruments.
Yep.
Yeah, that was, nobody was doing that. So, and I said this to Chris Warner last week. It's like, people came out and saw you guys play, and you were already killing it with the one song after the next. You're just like, wow, the syncopations and the tightness and the stops. And then you're like, you know what? You thought that was cool. We're just going to fuck with you some more. Check this out. Next thing you know, you guys are all just rotating instruments. And anybody who was, probably sitting with their, say some guys from some bands came in, they would come and see this and go, yeah, I think we're just going to go back to the rehearsal room and not come out for a year. I mean, there was a lot of creativity that you guys did as Sunset Strip. That was, matter of fact, let's do that. Let's just take a look at All My Time. This was from January 1990, January 21st, I believe, at the Red Garter in Clifton Heights. Let's take a quick look. It's just a minute of a song, All My Time. Now, before we hit this video, All My Time, was this a piece that was written as a Sunset Strip thing, or is this something that came over from Mask? And what was your involvement with it?
That was definitely a Sunset Strip song.
Okay.
And I believe, not the song, I believe. I believe I wrote the hook for that song.
For All My Time, right?
Gave the hook, because I remember driving around in Matt's car, me and him trying to work out a harmony on it and kind of changing, what's the melody going to be for that. And I believe some of my bass riffs were a part of that song too. I'm thinking
you're bass playing on this track, so let's check it out. We'll take a quick look at this video right here.
People ask me what I need, I do another company. Yeah, we're professionals. Woo!
Now, Bill, do you still have that bass? Do you still have that bass?
Yes, I do.
You still have that amp?
Yes, I do.
Powerful playing, man. Like that's the thing I always admired was, especially with the Sunset Strip stuff, and I think Matt carried that on throughout. Was that the bass going even back to you were talking about Larry Graham and James Jamerson, the bass line itself held the tune. Another you could sit there with a drummer and play just the bass and drum part, and it's almost there was a lot of counter thing going on. It wasn't, again, as I said earlier, you're not just following a guitar part. It's its own part, and that was something that you and Matt did that really resonated with me and a lot of the fellow musicians that I know around here. Was that it was its own entity. It was, again, getting back to even classical composition, the bass line was its own part. So I thought,
Yeah, Matt was a genius with those things. He could make this separation.
yeah,
And it was just magic.
it was phenomenal. So when, so as we know, Matt gets the Street Talk gig, and a matter of fact, it was that year. So it was January was that show that we just saw a little bit from that show. And then at one point, I think it was the summer, he joined Street Talk, but then you guys reconvened in November of the same year at the same venue and did another show, which we have footage of that as well. We're not going to show it on this particular show, but that was the famous hockey game that broke out in the middle of the show. We'll save that for another one. But so after Matt goes off, you find yourself playing bass for Vinnie Moore.
Yes, it did.
So how did that happen?
I can point this one back to Matt as well. A lot of things in my music career just I could trace back to Matt.
Right.
Because he's the guy who kind of got me started playing in clubs at an early age and stuff. When Vinnie was looking for a singer because they wanted to have like more of a band thing on his next album.
This is after the Time Odyssey.
Mind's Eye or Time Odyssey. I'm not.
Yeah, because Time Odyssey was 88, so this is probably around that time, 89, 90, right?
Yeah, and Mind's Eye. Well, when I toured with him, it was the Mind's Eye tour, so I guess Mind's Eye came after that. I don't know.
Well, okay.
Anyhow, he came out and saw Sunset Strip.
Nice.
Because he was interested in Matt, and he really wanted Matt to join the band, and I think Matt was considering it.
Okay.
But ended up going with the Street Talk gig, obviously, and things weren't happening with Sunset Strip anymore. I got a phone call from Vinnie. He needed a bass player too, and then he did talk to me about that.
Okay.
We met, and I got a phone call not too long after that saying, "Hey, I got a tour coming up, and we're going to have a show over at the Music Mess Festival in Frankfurt, Germany, which is kind of like the NAMM show of Europe. Mm-hmm. And do you want to come play bass for me?" And I was like, yes. Pretty much.
Gee, let me think.
Yeah, sure. And it's not confirmed, but I'm pretty sure that Matt had some influence in Vinnie's decision on that. Even though Matt had decided not to go with him.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So you went out, you did the tour with him, and then you come back and found yourself with Gypsy Rose.
Yes.
Okay. And you were with that band for how long before they changed their name?
I think 3 years, 2.5 3 years, something like that. Yeah.
And that was was that a hired gun gig, or were you writing at that point?
But that was another just me falling ass backwards into things. Just being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
It was they were playing at the Red Garter. It's kind of like how Mask was. And their bass player quit. Donnie Syracuse came down after the show, and I was just hanging out there and grabbed me. He's like, "Come on, I want to talk to you." So, "We need a bass player. Ed's leaving. You interested?" And I'm like, "Okay." And off we went. I think I was gigging with them within a week or two after that, because they already had shows booked.
Yeah, they And then I remember I was out in LA with Matt when I came back, and I ended up with you guys after they changed the name to Motherload. Stripped down version of the band, kind of piece, did some New York shows, had a great time. I think there was one day we were hanging out at the, I think it was the power station. We were recording demos, I think, for A&M, and we get there, and Bob Dylan was mastering one of his records, so we ended up getting shut out. So we were just walking around the streets of New York. I think we went to Manny's or did something. I don't know what we did.
Yeah. I remember the times up in New York with you, with those gigs and that particular thing and getting locked out.
Love the music industry.
Who's Bob Dylan, man? Going to your
go master your music at home. What are you doing? Come on, you got a record to make. So what do you? What was your and continues to be your biggest takeaway from Matt's music and Matt's influence on you? Because as you said, which is really poignant, because he did that as well to musicians that were fortunate enough to work with him, that were just, he did so much for them. Not just, hey, you got to call this guy, you got to call Bill. He's the man, or anything like that. It was just also just his generosity musically. What was your biggest takeaway? And what still, because me as an artist myself today and a writer, he haunts me in a good way. He's there on my shoulder going, yeah, dude, that's not a take. That's not a take. Do it again. He's in my ear. Now, how is it for you? Where are you with that?
I think it was the biggest influence for right now.
Yeah,
I would say is having a home studio and doing production and recording all instruments. I'm playing guitar, bass, my synths, and doing all that stuff. I wish I had an ounce of his talent with arrangements, and his discipline with just getting it done.
That's
So,
the thing about him that was insane, was his unbelievable ability to stay on topic or a piece for 12 hours sometimes.
Yeah, he would demo it, and it might come back and you would bring it to rehearsal. It would be rough, it'd be hitting bad notes and the little things would be off, but the song was done.
Right.
And that's what we would just take it. And then eventually he would re-record it, or we would re-record it. And a lot of the Sunset Strip stuff and the Mask stuff got re-recorded like 3 or 4 times.
Really?
I played on some of them. He played bass on some of them. And Chris played on a lot of stuff. And yeah, it's so for present day, I think the biggest impact was the workflow of doing a studio thing.
Right.
And, I mean, I had other influences, in music as well, but he was the first that kind of showed me that, because we were working off a little Fostex 4-track.
Yeah, the 4-track.
Yeah, it was like we'd fill up 4 tracks, bounce them down to 1. Now we'd have 3 tracks to work with, and we'd fill 3 and bounce them down to 1. Now we'd have 2 tracks to work with. So it was just pretty cool. Cool. And now it's completely different.
Yeah, it's completely. But there was an idea that you had to have some sort of foresight into where you were going with the tune.
Mm-hmm.
Like now, it's true nowadays. You can sit there, you can fold out multiple tracks and try 15,000 ideas and not worry about it. But in those days, it was like you almost had to have a sense of where it was going, which is a great way. It's and I feel the same way, like that. I never would have continued with home studios if it wasn't for him. And I learned harmony through the use of studios. All the theory knowledge that I have today was sparked by the idea of being able to listen back to myself and saying, oh, that doesn't work. Oh, this works. Why? And then learning why that worked, So what are you doing now? What are your musical endeavors currently? Is there anything that you're putting out? Is there anything that you're working on that listeners might be able to find or
Not find yet. There will be something. So I'm doing instrumental things, basically. I'd like to get some things finished. I think I understand the production and all that stuff right now because I have a hard drive full of 1 to 1.5 minute half-written songs that I just got to glue things together and get like 5 songs. I'll probably dump it up on some streaming service or something like that. But it'll be under a pseudonym. I won't be using my name.
no?
No. I like the anonymity.
Billy the Kid. New album.
Yeah, I think I get that from being such a Nine Inch Nails fan.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Well, it's phenomenal stuff as well. That's awesome, man. So yeah, we hope definitely hope to hear some stuff coming out of your camp, and please share if you can your favorite Matt Bradley story. It could be a moment on stage, it could be a moment just hanging out with him, or just an anecdote, something that is definitively Matt Bradley. Give us the Bill Ashton take on a day in the life with Matt Bradley.
Oh boy, well, we worked together for a while at that District Photo place, so we spent a lot of time in a car. A lot of musicians were there. Yeah.
Where all those harmonies got worked out.
What was that?
That's where all those harmonies got worked out.
Yeah, and you could always tell what musicians worked at District Photo because their left arms would be tanner than or in my case, sunburned. It would be more on the left side than the right side. It was
Right.
pretty funny because there's a lot of people like Steve Hove worked there and Matt, me, and there's a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, a ton of guys.
So we spent a lot of time in the car, and oh god, there's so many funny stories, so many good stories. But I'll give a stage thing, and it just wasn't a great thing. It was an accident, but just to give you an idea of what Matt was like to work with, is we were playing, I believe it was at the Red Garter, and I moved towards the center of the stage, and Matt ran across this towards me, and the headstock of my bass clipped him in the face. Right? And I mean, I could feel it when he hit, and I was like, oh my God. And then he just looked, and he was like, and he just kept on singing. He just kept on going. And we finished the show. He went to the hospital, got stitches, and he was like, "Oh, that was messed up." It was like he wasn't angry or anything about it, but that's how the show must go on, no matter what.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Oh man, the old head stuck in the face trick.
Yeah, that one caused a scar. I mean, he had to go to the emergency room afterwards and get stitches.
Yeah, but he finished the show.
Yeah,
that's awesome, man. That is so cool. And that's Matt Bradley. And we've been hanging out with Bill Ashton today. I can't thank you enough. And again, Matt, this is an honor just to be able to see you and talk to you after, I don't even want to count the years, but I know it was the early 90s.
Yep.
I had a great time playing with you. And of course, I've always had even since the Sunset Strip days, obviously, but even beyond that, I was actually honored I'll be honest with you, and this is the first time I'm saying this publicly, and it's the absolute truth. This is not hyperbole, or this is not me blowing smoke. I only took that gig because you were in the band.
Oh, that was good to hear. Thank you.
At the time, I had gotten the offer to work with Doro, and I guess, but I was like, no, I want to play with Bill Ashton, man, because
I was happy to hear you were joining.
Yeah,
because we'd known each other for before that. So,
well, yeah, but you were always someone that because you guys, you, Matt, you guys were a monolith to me, like in terms of because I was picking up this stuff. I'm like listening to this stuff going, I couldn't sit there and theoretically understand it. but I knew that there was something really unique about that music. I'm like, man, there's something going on here that was so far beyond anything else that I was listening to. Even on commercial records, I would go out to Sam Goody and buy, you know. So I was always a fan, and it was, like I said, it was an honor to play with you, even though it was only a few months. But those New York shows were so much fun, and again, just to be able to share the stage with Bill Ashton on the bass, and you guys saw that video of him doing his thing. You guys know what I'm talking about, so there you go.
Yeah, it was Gypsy Rose was a different vibe, but it was still very well arranged, good music. And Rhonda was a great drummer too.
Oh my God, yeah, solid drummer. Yeah,
right.
No, I enjoyed every minute of it, and of course, as you know, enjoyed playing with you, and very much enjoyed talking to you today about Matt and your contributions and what else you've done. It's phenomenal stuff. So thank you so much for your time, and everyone keep an ear out. I don't know what his name's going to be. He hasn't told us yet. But as soon as I figure it out,
I'll let it go when it goes. And it was I think one of the, again, I'll drive this back to Matt again, because Matt got back in touch with me around the late 2000s or so.
Yeah.
I hadn't talked to him in over a decade, and he was out in California, and he was doing some work for some musician in New York, where I think Matt was producing it and singing on it.
Okay.
He just got in touch with me. He's like, I don't like the way I'm doing the bass lines. You're going to do better justice for it. And it just started sending me the stems. And I just started getting into recording at home. So I'm like, okay. And then we started talking about, hey, it would be cool if we started collaborating online a little bit and, come up with some new stuff. And that kind of went on for a little bit. And that sparked me to get my butt in the studio a bit more. I mean, at the time, my kids were really young, and work, I was traveling a little bit with work, so I didn't have as much time back then. But now, there's the all-nighters on the weekends.
That's great.
So, but once I get it out, there'll be something that people don't know about.
Definitely looking forward to hearing it, without a doubt. And again, thank you. And you're right. You know what? At the end of the day, the fact, and I feel this way, is that one of the things that keeps me making music, and perhaps yourself with the studio, it all traces back to Matt and what he did. And, he was fearless, so it's fantastic. And again, I can't thank you enough for spending your Saturday with us and giving us your insight. If you or someone you love is struggling right now, especially in these difficult times, please know that there is help and there is hope. Please contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 or visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. You have so much to share, and we want you to stick around.